Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Sounds of the Diaspora, Artist to Artist, a conversation with yours truly, Dion Parson. It gives me great pleasure today to have this guest joining us, someone that I've known for many years. We've been through the trenches, played some great music together. This gentleman is a saxophonist, composer, arranger, band leader, and an educator, and one of the most on call, like the first call musician for studio sessions in New York City. Please join me in welcoming to Sounds of the Diaspora, the one and only Mr. Steve Wilson.
Hey, D, nice to be with you, man. Really great to be with you.
Yes, sir, man. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, man, thank you. The honor is mine. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So you always have a lot going on, and I know you just moved. You're in the process of moving, so I don't know how you do it.
As you can see,
it's like, let me do this podcast with D and go back.
Yeah.
That's how it is when you're so busy. They say if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person, right?
Right, there you go. That's it. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So besides moving and all those great things, what else have you been up to?
Well, of course, school has started with a month into our semester at City College in New York, CCNY. So I'm the director of jazz studies there, but I work with some amazing colleagues, Mike Holliber, Ray Gallen, Suzanne Pitson. And, we're a team. We, do everything together. And we have really great students this year. Our grad program is booming. We have about 20 grad students now. And from all over the planet, and undergrads are coming up, so we got some busy time going on there, so I have a few things coming up. Actually, I'll be with because you were talking about Dizzy's. I'll be at Dizzy's soon with Rich Rufus Reed, the maestro, and his big band.
Okay.
And a few dates in between now and the holidays. Be with Christian McBride at the Vanguard in December doing this annual week there.
Right.
It's a lot going on.
Great, man. As usual, constantly on the move, making great music and touching folks with your music. But share with our audience, because you're at the top of your career. I always ask the guests this, because we don't always start off on the top. How did we get there? But the saxophone, I mean, how did that come into your life?
Well, when I was a kid, I grew up in Hampton, Virginia. And my father started taking me to the Hampton Jazz Festival, which was produced by George Wein, who, of course, started Newport. And he started a festival in Hampton in 1968. And he would bring down all of the artists that he would have at Newport and his other festivals. So I got to see a lot of great people. Before I was 12 years old, I got to see Eddie Harris, who was probably my first influence in terms of wanting to play the saxophone, through seeing him live, and also through the record Swiss Movement, which was a big hit jazz record in 1969. My father had that record, and he also had Quincy Jones Walking in Space, another record from 1969. And on that record was Rahsaan Roland Kirk.
Okay.
And I got to see Rahsaan live at the festival. And then the other early influence was Cannonball, Cannonball Adderley. And my father took me to the festival to see Cannonball. I think it was 1971 or 72. When he had the Country Preacher record out. And so I think that was the last year that Joe Zawinul was in the band. So it was the classic quintet with Joe Zawinul, Nat, Walter Booker, and the great Roy McCurdy.
Okay.
So seeing those folks live, man, was what lit the fire for me. I said, man, I don't know what that is, but I want to do that. And hearing the music around the house on the records, and then there also as a kid, as a teenager, all the kids in my neighborhood played music.
Okay.
Everybody played an instrument. My cousin, I had 3 or 4 cousins in the neighborhood around the block. The one played flute, one played trumpet, one played clarinet. And an older friend of mine who's a couple years older, he gave me my first saxophone lesson. And so I got the feel for it, and I was like, man, yeah, I really want to do this. And so it just went on from there, going to junior high school, playing in all the bands. But now I had to back up half a step because I really wanted to be a drummer before I was a saxophonist.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, to this day I'm a frustrated drummer. But that's really my first love. But seeing the saxophone and hearing that sound, I was like, oh man, that's really great. So but I did manage to get my drum thing on, playing drums in marching band. So that was the last time I played drums, honestly. But
you have a kid at your house at your place?
No, that's my dream though. I still in an apartment, but once I get my permanent place, the place that I'll die in, I'll have a drum set. Yeah. Oh yeah. You can believe that.
Play all you want.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Great. That's beautiful, man. So it seems like you grew up in a well-rounded musical environment, which is great, man. Some cats have it in church, some cats have it in school, but you had it in your neighborhood, which is amazing.
Yeah, it was great because at school, I played in, as most of us did in those days, and I'm speaking of the 70s, symphonic wind band, because we didn't have a symphony orchestra with no strings, but we had a wind band. And then it wasn't called jazz band in those days. It was called stage band.
Stage band, yep.
And so I had that experience at school, and I also played oboe in symphonic wind band. And was actually an oboe major my first year in college. But so I had that experience. But then outside of school, we had garage bands, again, made up of all the kids in the neighborhood, because we played at our school dances and stuff, and the Elks Lodges and military bases, because where I grew up, all the military bases were there, Navy, right. Everything, Air Force. And so I started playing with older musicians, playing, funk, R&B, and then jazz in my late teen years. I started sitting in with some local jazz musicians. And then I went to school at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia, and was a jazz major there. But I was studying classical flute, oboe, jazz studies with, all improvisation, arranging the whole thing. So, and I got to meet a lot of great musicians from New York when I was in college. And that was important. That was a real turning point, because I got to meet people like Woody Shaw, to meet Benny Carter, the great Benny Carter, who came, Jackie Byrd, Frank Foster, Betty Carter, the Heath brothers, who I stayed close with Jimmy until he passed away recently. And so that was really the impetus for me getting to New York, was, seeing those musicians come through Richmond.
Wow, that's a rich, and a tall glass of water with all the cats that you're talking. I mean, that's a rich environment there, having a Virginia Commonwealth. One of the things I really enjoyed is just hearing how jazz kind of like evolved through the education system and influenced a lot of cats, guys that didn't have the access to, because if you weren't in Chicago or New Orleans or New York, the major cities, you didn't really have access to those names that you mentioned. So
that's right. So
you were in a good place at a good time. It's kind of like my influence in St. Thomas. I heard the Rutgers University jazz professors, which was Kenny Byron at the time, Larry Ridley on bass, Frank Foster on sax, Ted Dunbar guitar, and Philly Joe Jones on drums.
Wow.
And the same thing you said, I was like, I don't know what that is, but that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I chased those guys. So so for me, like through education, there was a huge influence, and similar to what you have. I mean, I had it in the islands. It's not as readily available as what happens in the States, but so that's why I admire, knowing you and hearing your story as well is a similar story, and seeing what you've done with it, because again, you've always been a great influence to me through all the years I've known you, just how you conduct yourself professionally, so what you learn from those guys definitely
oh yeah
it worked.
Yeah, well, I think I know that both of us share another important connecting point to New York, and that's our dearly departed brother Ralph Peterson Jr.
Definitely, yes.
Who was I know a huge influence on both of us, and I joined the band OTB 1986, the year before I moved to New York, because I had met Kenny Garrett a few years before that, and when Kenny was leaving the band to go with Art Blakey and Miles Davis, he gave me a call and said, "Hey man, I can't make some of these gigs. Would you be interested in doing the gigs with OTB?" I said, "Of course." And that's where I met Ralph and all of the guys, Mike Mossman, Ralph Bowen, Harry Pickens,
Right.
Kenny Davis. And Ralph was really the one that said, "Hey man, you need to get to New York. You come on, you got to come on."
Yeah.
And so he took me under his wing, and I learned so much from Ralph about music, about the business. He was the first one to tell me, "Man, get you a publishing company."
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one of the first business things I did when I got to New York. And because he told me how it all worked, but he really taught me how to hear music.
Right.
And that's when I hung with him, I understood what he was playing and how and why he was playing it,
Right.
because of how he heard music.
Right.
He heard the whole scope of the band.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just about his component taking care of drums, because as we know, Ralph could play great trumpet, great piano.
Mm-hmm.
So he really understood every role of every musician on the bandstand.
Right.
And that completely changed the way that I approached music. So Ralph was a huge part of it, and still to this day, I take that legacy of Ralph with me.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, same thing with me. I mean, we spend nights after night, sometimes 2 nights in a row without sleeping and just up talking, listening, and not moving from the spot. He's like, "I'm gonna play it again. Tell me what you're hearing," type of thing. But
Right.
connecting all of this to the diaspora is one of the things that we as African Americans have, is that component of the rhythms and stuff. And I didn't even know you wanted to be a drummer. That's probably why you connected with Ralph so well.
Absolutely.
And understood what was happening, and it shows, and you can hear it in your playing and your relationships with other musicians. I know being on the bandstand, you looking at me,
Yeah, man.
Because I'm like, this guy knows what I'm playing. Some guys just be like, "Yeah, tell me when to come in," and following you, do your thing, So
yeah, man.
It's really great when you understand the full picture. And again, like that's what Ralph did for both of us.
Yeah.
As a musician, we still have to take the time and do that work for ourselves, and it shows with all the folks that you've played with. I mean, I want to talk about that for a minute, because when I look at your bio and your resume, I mean, like who's who in jazz is like you've played with everybody, and I'm gonna ask you this question because I know a lot of the other young cats say, like, "Man, how do you get gigs? And once you get gigs, how do you keep getting gigs?" And
Mm-hmm.
so for our audience, just let them know, share with them like what your concept is as a sideman. I'll just say that as a sideman. When people call you, how do you present yourself and prepare yourself for those gigs?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that helped me tremendously is being a good reader. And that comes to my early training. Because actually, one of the first gigs I had in New York was not a jazz gig. I got the gig with Stephanie Mills, R&B singer, 1981. And so I got the call to come to New York to join the band. And so I had my alto. So when I showed up to the rehearsal at SRR, when it was still on 52nd Street, it was the book was for tenor. And I was like, "Oh," but see, I could transpose really well at that time, and so I sight transposed the book and got the gig. But then when I moved to New York a few years later, I got to the first gig I got called for was a big band, subbing in a big band led by Tom Pearson. The following week, I got called by Dick Oates to sub in the Mel Lewis Orchestra.
Oh, the Vanguard, yeah.
And so, when you go on that gig, there's no rehearsal. At that time, there were about 300 charts in the book. Some of the original handwritten charts by by Thad Jones and Bob Brookmeyer and people wrote for the band. And and I'm sitting between Joe Lovano and Ted Nash and Gary Simoleon and, Earl Gardner sitting in the back, all the, Earl McIntyre. And you just got to deal.
Right.
And so, having those experiences is really what prepared me for everything else I was to do in New York, because, to be a good reader, very oftentimes you don't get a chance to do rehearsals,
Right.
or when you get called to do a rehearsal, you want to be able to get through this stuff and process as fast as you can. So reading really helped me a great deal. Doubling, being able to double on flute
Right.
and other horns. I'm primarily a saxophonist, but I studied classical flute for a year at school,
Right.
and that really helped my flute playing. And so you go, in large ensemble gigs, people want you to double on flute, because that flute's a different animal from saxophone.
Right.
So having that together, and then also being versatile, because which came naturally to me because I love all kinds of music.
Right.
I didn't come up just a jazz baby. I heard everything, funk, R&B, rock, soul, gospel, and I loved all kinds of music. I still do. So when I go on a gig, I don't think about, what this gig isn't. I think about what the gig is
Right.
and how I can get what can I bring to
Right.
what the band leader wants. So I kind of see myself as an actor in a way. Like, I approach it as sort of an actor. I go in, what is the story? What's the story of the music? What does the composer want? And instead of trying to insert myself on the music, say, well, I play this kind of stuff over these kind of chord changes, and I
Right.
sound
Right.
like this.
Right.
I was like, no, let me take a step back. What does the composer want? Why did they call me? Let me see what I can bring to it. What is the intention? And then I start from there, and like, oh, okay. And then I try to find myself within that role
Right.
of the part. So, I try to always bring a wide perspective to every situation that I'm in.
Yeah. And that makes sense, man. That's really beautiful what you just said, because it makes a lot of sense. I know the last gig you and I did, we were on the sidelines, kind of like huddling, having that same conversation. Like, is this the vibe?
Right.
And a couple of cats came in and like, yeah, I'm asking myself the same question also, because it's like, it was so intricate. The music was so intricate, you
That's
know.
right.
And being a professional, you want to be, authentic, and you want to make sure that you're serving the music right.
Yeah.
So it's always been, it's been clear, having those conversations with you, and it makes sense what you just said, because I've heard people say the same thing. It's like, just play the book, show up and
Right.
just play the book. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I learned from a lot of great people, as a side man, and how to be a side man. A lot of leaders I work with and people I work with. So playing beside, like, playing in Ralph's band, of course, playing, with some of the other people I've played with, Buster Williams,
Yeah.
and playing in large ensembles beside some of my heroes, people like Jerry Dodgen,
Hmm.
who really taught me a lot about saxophone sound, not through his verbal exchange, but just through the example of how he plays lead alto. He never forced anything, but he just made you listen, and he made it feel so easy.
Right.
And Dick Oates, so and also Jerome Richardson, who I got to play beside, and ironically, those are the only three lead alto players in the entire history of the Thad Jones, Mel Lewis, and Vanguard Jazz Orchestra. Those three guys, since
Wow.
1966
Wow.
to this day, those are the only three lead alto players. So those guys have been a huge influence on me.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's great to have that. It's like on the job training,
That's right.
and what's so unique about your upbringing is that you have both classical and jazz. A lot of cats just say, well, I just study jazz, but the fact that you were oboe major for a year in college and then you study a year of flute brings a whole nother thing. And in this day and age, you have to be that versatile, man.
Yes.
You know, you have to be that versatile. One of the first conversations I had with Kenny Davis, believe it or not, Kenny Davis and Smitty Smith, when I first moved to New York, they sat me down. It was like, man, get you a Broadway gig. I was like, get me a Broadway gig. So get a sub on the show, become a sub on the show. You'll keep your reading up. Of course, you're gonna make some bread when you're not on the road. You
Right.
have something in town. You're not chasing $50 jam session gigs.
Right.
And it made sense. And I did that, bro. And it was a whole nother person, because that led to other things, to the jingles, the whole jingle scene and all of
Yeah.
that. that came out of that, because once you in that and you can hold your own, it creates a whole nother thing.
Oh,
And so
yes.
many young cats are just chasing gigs after gigs, and they don't realize that there is an institution out here established with gigs if you have the right foundation.
That's right.
Through the union, yeah.
And I never got to do the Broadway scene. I got close a couple of times, but through that same the same way of getting calls from veteran musicians, I got called to sub a lot.
Right.
Because sometimes they would have a session they couldn't make, or a rehearsal, or a gig. I got calls from people like Frank West. And Frank, as you know, Frank was one of the most workingest musicians in New York in history. Right. And Frank would call me, "Hey, Steve, hey, I got this rehearsal I can't make, man. You think you go?" Yeah. And and then I got called to sub on a Carnegie Hall band with our man Faddis, and so all of those sub gigs led to other things.
Yeah.
And this is what I try to get young musicians to understand. Like, look, man, it's great if you get with someone, or if you get signed to a record label. God bless you. If it happens, wonderful. But even that is cyclical.
Right.
That is cyclical. And so you have to have, it's just basically, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Right. You have to prepare for the long haul. You have to have the tools that's going to get you through the times when you aren't getting all the press.
Right.
And when somebody else, when the record company says, "Okay, your deal is up. Thank you very much. Next."
Right.
So, you have to have and you have to build relationships.
Right.
You cannot burn bridges. You got to build relationships, because it helps you professionally and artistically.
Yeah, and building relationships comes with people skills too.
Absolutely.
You have your IQ and you have your EQ. You have your emotional well-being that you have to take care of also.
That's right.
That's that boat. You know what I'm talking about.
I love that, man. I'm gonna use that.
Yeah, a lot of cats make that boat. They're great. You hear them, man, that cat can play. And when you're going to talk to him, like, the emotional is like they just don't have that social skill in place, man.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, man, I got this gig on the road. I don't know if I could be two weeks on the road with this cat. You start thinking like that.
And look, folks should know we won't name names because that's not important, but there are folks, unfortunately, they're in the vast minority, I'll call them. They're in the very smallest percentage, but folks who have been so gifted and so talented, and you love to hear them play, but they have a thing that they don't have that EQ, IQ thing happen. Yeah. And it's like, well, man, I'm sorry, but I just can't deal with that, because I got to get this done, so.
Yeah. And again, I'm glad you brought that up, like relationship building, because that's really important. When you look at somebody's resume like yours, and you see 50 gigs and 50 band leaders, and you're like, this is somebody that has it going on. You're not just getting those gigs, just on like the fact that I play the flute. It's like you mentioned, is relationships, is showing up on time, is knowing the music, it's a whole package.
Absolutely.
And a lot of that gets lost in translation with some of these young guys, because it's just like, I just want a gig.
Right.
Yeah. And I learned very early. I think I was pretty fortunate how I came to New York out of college with a gig. And one of the first people I met on the road was Lewis Nash. And he pulled me aside and he's like, "Yo, man, when you get back to New York, call me, come by the house." And he just sat me down and was like, "Checks and balances. These are things you need to do and know all the time. Don't ever deviate, Yeah. And again, our dear friend Ralph Peterson, but one of my biggest mentors was Michael Carvin as well.
Yeah, Tabo.
Tabo, that actually just like laid it down the line for me, and it's like, you don't even deviate from this. Somebody call you, bam.
Right. Yeah.
This is what you got to do,
Yeah, I got to hang with Tabo a few times, man, and before he left for LA, of course, and and I met him through Ralph, of course, and man, he always laid some pearls of wisdom on me. As a matter of fact, I'll tell this quick story. My very first trip to the Village Vanguard, 1981, Michael Carvin was playing with Illinois Jacquet, and Slam Stewart. And I walked up to Michael Carvin, and man, and he was schooling me then. He said, "Man," and you know about this. He said, "Man, you see that muscle right here? Yeah. See that muscle?" So I got that from Motown. So he was schooling me even then, man, before I moved to New York. So yeah, he was the master.
Yeah, and a lot of young cats don't get that type of, you know, experience these days, because it's like come straight out of the classroom, get a gig, and you know we were I came to New York after you, but it's like there was still a scene, an active scene that was run by musicians, and musicians go hang and check out other musicians, and I was part of it, man. And you know that's why it's so important. I was so happy when you said you're gonna be on the show, because I was like, Steve's gonna lay it on the line. He's gonna tell us. You know, and speaking of Michael Carvin, I mean, he was one of those. I think him and they did a duet album together, Jackie Mack.
Man,
yeah,
that's right. That's one of the great saxophone drum records of all time, man.
Right. So as I'm checking out the music that you shared with us, I'm like, yes, the tradition is still being carried on, because not too many people can sustain that. You know.
That's true.
Yeah, to do that, man. And you did that with our good friend Lewis Nash. You did a duologue, and tell us about that recording.
Yeah, well, Lewis and I have been, we've had this duo now for over 20 years. You know, but obviously something that we didn't do all the time, because for several reasons, one, our respective schedules. And of course, Lewis being, if not the busiest drummer in music, and probably in the top 5. But we started this about 20 years ago at a loft series that my manager was producing at the time. And we just showed up. We didn't have no rehearsal. We showed up at the gig. We talked about a few tunes we could play off of. And that's where it started. And, you know, playing with Lewis, I don't have to tell you, you don't miss anything. You don't miss bass drum. I mean, you don't miss bass, piano, guitar, or another one, whatever. He's so musical. And so hence the subtitle of our group, Duologue, because it's like a conversation that we have when we play together. And it feels so organic and so natural. We really don't have to talk about anything. We don't really talk about routine, sequence of events. We just say, well, let's decide on this tune, that tune, and we just go. Yeah. And it's so beautiful, man, because you know, he hears the melodic line all the time. He hears the voice leading, the chord changes. And what a lot of people probably don't know is that Lewis is one of the best scat singers in the business. So he'll do it occasionally on a gig. So, and of course, for me, I get to live vicariously through him as a wannabe drummer. So
it always comes back to that.
It always comes back to the drums for me, man. So
That's great, man. Well, you shared a song with us, but I actually enjoyed, man, listening to it. So we're gonna play this for our audience right now, and this is from the album Duologue, Lewis Nash and Steve Wilson duet, and this is RCJG. Let's check it out. That was RCJG by Steve Wilson. Duet with Lewis Nash. Makes Me Smile. Nice groove by one of our listeners. So what's the concept behind that song?
Yeah, well, the title, the acronym is written for two of my musical heroes. Of course, the great Ron Carter, maestro, who I had the good fortune of playing with in his big band. Actually playing at Birdland in October. Big band.
Okay.
And Jimmy Jufrey, who a lot of people don't know, but Jimmy Jufrey's great saxophonist, baritone saxophonist, clarinetist, composer and arranger. He composed the Four Brothers for Woody Herman's band.
Okay.
But he also he was one of the pioneers of what was called avant-garde music, third stream music. So I just thought, man, what if these two guys got together and did something?
Right.
So I tried to take elements of both, but I wrote it specifically for Lewis and I. I had us in mind. I actually wrote it for that record date. We were in Pittsburgh, and the night before the session, I wrote it. So,
okay.
So I heard Lewis all the way.
Yeah, and he's in there, like you said. You didn't miss the bass, you didn't miss the keyboards. He's in there painting his strokes over the canvas and doing his thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just so great to be able to be that open, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. Is I was listening to interview by Gary Bartz, and we were talking about improvisation, like describe improvisation. He's like, to just kind of paraphrase what he was saying is like, you're just being creative. You're composing all the time as you're playing. And that's what I hear in this, because yes, you have a set melody, but there's so many nuances. And being a frustrated drummer,
yes,
there's so much left for interpretation. Sometimes I get into a rehearsal, even get in a gig, and the cat give you a chart, and it's like slash 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 swing slash 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 slash, and then 4 bars of Latin and slash slash slash.
Right, you're like, hey man, what am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah, man. And then it's like, and then you play like right down. It's like that's not the right clavier, and I'm like, bro, like I don't know if it's 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me hear it first, So
right.
It's so much left for interpretation when you as a drummer, and to play the right stuff or not play the right stuff. That's all part of it.
Yeah, because I'm sure as a drummer, you want to have some reference. If they're giving you some paper, like, hey man, give me a reference. Give me, bass part. What is the melody?
Yeah.
What's the something? Because when you saw the slash, it's like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't know. And like we were talking about our good friend, our dear friend, Elio Villafranca. And one of the things I love about Elio, when he sends me a chart, especially a new chart, he'll send like a MP3 of him playing, but he also sends a bass line.
Right.
It's not just like, if it's an older song and he'll send a recording, I can check it out. But there's a lot of times you say, hey man, here's a new song. He'll send the melody, but he'll send the bass line so you could actually hear what the groove is. And he's playing all his parts. And it makes sense because it's just so much so much left for interpret. The slash stuff, man, when you talk to your arranging students, let them know slash is not hip, bro.
It's not until you get to the point where you've played through a certain section and you're keeping time. But you need, when it comes to playing the arrangement, you need some cues. You need musical cues. You need musical reference. If they don't know how to write out a full drum part, which I know is not always necessary, but you need to have some
lead sheet is
something.
So just give me a lead sheet, man. I could swim with that, but as I'm sinking, and it's not going to be sink or swim here. You want to swim all the time. You want to be able to be in the moment, and
absolutely,
And that's what with Nash, man. He's so tasty and effective with what he does melodically, and just switching from toms and the way the drums are tuned is very complimentary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to acknowledge one quick thing. I'm so glad you mentioned Gary Bartz, because he's really my spirit guide, man. My musical spirit guide, man. I've loved Bartz since I was like 16, 17 years old, and to this day, he's my musical spirit guide, man. So
yeah, it's really amazing how you could mention a name and these guys, you know, they just have a reference in your life. They've touched you a certain way.
yes,
And that's one of the things I enjoyed when I came to New York in 1990. That was a major factor, especially from the drum standpoint. I mean, you had the academics from Max Roach, and then you had the, you know, the rawness from Elvin Jones, and the the groove from Art Blakey. Like when you
yeah,
mention those drummers and check them out, you know what you was gonna get like all the time.
yeah, that's
You
right.
know, and you know, it's a difference. The swing between a Tony Williams and a Jack DeJohnette is like, you know, it makes so much difference in how you approach things. Like, again, talking about slash slash slash. Somebody gives you a piece of music and they say a la Elvin Jones. You know exactly how.
Right,
how
right. That's right.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
it. You know the vibe they want. Like,
You know the
okay,
vibe
got
they
it.
want, or they say Tony Williams, or you know, yeah, and again, talking about being versatile, you as a saxophone player is the same thing as a drummer, just being able to cross those genre lines. And I've seen you in those different genre lines as well at some of the gigs I've been on, so I know exactly what you're talking about, just being professional. So it really makes sense. But to do it, I think
Mhm.
one of the conversations I've had with guys, and you could share this with me as a leader, you know, you want to be able to play a trio. You want to be able to
Mhm.
play a quartet. You want to have a quintet, be in a big band. But a duo is one of the things. Playing a duet is one of the things that not too many cats get to.
Yeah, and to me, I mean, it's the most intimate musical setting you can be in,
Yeah,
because you've pared it down, and whatever that duo is, and it forces you to listen.
right.
You know,
Yeah,
if that's not a part of what one does, and I hope they do, because playing is 50% listening, no matter what the
oh yeah,
configuration.
oh yeah,
But also to be able to make use of the silence,
yeah, yeah,
because that's a part of the music. The air is a part of the music. So it's it's like, and again, another analogy that Lewis and I use, were like two dancers,
right.
coming onto the stage,
Mm.
and I think of, like when Gregory Hines and his brother, when they were young, when they used to dance together, was,
Yeah,
it's like two tap dancers, man. Just you just have this exchange of dialogue going, and form is important, but you're free within the form.
you feel within the form. That's great, man. That's great. Well, man, you're a really proficient composer in what you do and what you bring to the table too. And so I'd like to move on with another one of your beautiful compositions entitled "Song for Anna." That's one of the songs. One of the songs you shared with us. So let's check that out, and we'll talk about it after. Yeah, man. Yeah, you talking about playing some stuff from the Diaspora. That's straight up, all up in there. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a tune that I wrote when I was with Chick Corea's group Origin,
Okay.
and that record Passages was recorded for his label, which was distributed by Concord. I think that was early 2000s. I think 2003 or something, maybe 2001 or two, something like that. And certainly I heard, the classic Chick sound, the Rhodes flute sound, which a sound that he pioneered really with Joe Farrell in the original Return to Forever group. And I wrote the song for Chick's mother, Anna, who was so cool because she would come to our gigs and sit right in the front row and be digging the music. It was great. So it was really done in the spirit of Chick.
Nice. And who was a percussionist on that?
That was Adam Cruz.
That was Adam Cruz.
Yeah, playing Kashishi. Yeah.
Okay. Adam,
Yeah.
How's he doing, man? I haven't seen or heard of Adam in a minute.
Yeah, he's doing great, man. He's working with Danilo's trio, and I think they just got back from a tour not long ago, and he's teaching at Berkeley in the global program. So, and he's sounding fantastic. Sounds great.
Adam, man, is a great musician and a great human being too, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, good people.
Yeah, obviously, I got to reach out to him. It's been a minute.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, let's continue with your music. You have another song here, and this is a song entitled Cisco.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's check this out. Cisco.
Okay.
Yeah, man. That's that's that group that you play with
Well, Buster, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That group's been together a long time, actually. We've been together for over 20 years, so that's a lot of fun playing with Lenny and George Colligan and Buster, man. It's
yeah.
go anywhere with those guys.
Go anywhere with it. Yeah, and you can hear it again. It goes back to that duet thing.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't know that was going to happen in the day. I was like, oh, okay, all right, let's go.
That seems to be a recurring theme now. Man. Checking you out,
Yeah,
duologue.
right, right. Yeah, that's it. I got to get my drums on somehow.
You got to get it all time. You're doing a good job, man. You right there. First with Nash, now with Lenny, and hey, you never know.
Well,
Keep on going on, man. You ever did any duets with Ralph?
actually, we didn't do it as a project, but invariably on his gigs, man, it would turn into a duet sometimes,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it was incredible, man.
yeah.
But
I can imagine.
I had to just to real quick. My first drum duo was actually with Billy Drummond,
Okay.
because Billy and I are from the same area in Virginia, and I would go up to Billy's house and hang, and he taught me so much about music and about drums. And I think I was like maybe 18 or 19, and he was a year or two ahead of me. But he would put on all of the great records with Train and Elvin and Miles and Philly Joe and Tony, and we would just listen to a ton of records, and then we just started playing duo, and so that was really my first experience playing drums and saxophone duo.
Okay. Good. So you have a history of drummers with drummers. That's good.
Yes.
That's a lot. That's you and Steve Nelson should have a conversation.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, about drummers and doing that, because when I was in college, Steve was actually taking drum lessons.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was working on that, so, and he was the one that hit me to the fact that like cats should be checking that out. We would have those conversations. So yeah, you should have a conversation with him.
Well, okay, I definitely will. We just played together this weekend, actually.
Yeah, you'll have a lot to talk about.
Okay, we definitely will.
Great,
for sure.
So that was Cisco with the great Buster Williams group, George Colligan, Lenny White, and Steve, Wilson, of course, and Buster on bass. But yeah, man, it's been a pleasure having you on. We have one more song, and this last song is entitled Jake's Place. Yeah, let's check out Jake's Place.
All right.
Yes, sir. Jake's Place.
Yeah, man, I got the Groove Masters on there. Ray Angry
Hmm.
on organ and keyboards, and Ben Williams on bass, and Willie Jones III on drums. Man, we had a lot of fun making that record.
I could tell, man. I could tell. It reminds me of two things. It reminds me of like Harlem back in the day, Showman's organ joint.
Yep, yep. That's the vibe. That's the Soul Town. Soul
Yeah,
Town, man. That's
yep.
what it's
And then
all
the South
about.
Side of Chicago.
Yes, it's all about the Soul Town in that one, man.
Yeah,
Yes,
man.
sir.
Put a smile on my face right because that was the sound in Harlem, man, back in the day. That's
Right.
like so many organ spots.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because people came to get their groove on, and the musicians, you can still do your thing in that zone. You can get it all in there.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
great,
But
man. Great. Beautiful
yeah,
music, man. All the songs and all the compositions are great. All of them are different, from the duets to the hard hitting stuff with Buster's group, and the Chicago groove with organ. It shows your versatility, man. Thanks for sharing this with us.
no, thank you, man. It's been a real pleasure, man. I love your show. What you're doing for the music, what you're doing for the community, the work you're doing at Virgin Islands, and for the young musicians coming along, and they're gonna get out here and shake up the world, man. So thanks for all your contributions, and can't wait till we get on the bandstand together again.
Yes, sir. Yes, I'm looking forward to that again, man. So definitely, I'm gonna hit you up when I get into the city next week.
Please do. I look forward to
Yes.
it.
So let it before you leave. Tell our audience where they can find you, social media, website, all of that type of stuff.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Steve Wilson Music, and on Facebook, and my website, which are actually constructing a new website. But Steve Wilson Music, still up. The old one's still up, but we're putting together a new one, which hopefully will be up in a couple of months. So, yeah, but and like I said, I'll be at Disney's with Rufus Reed later this month. Birdland with Ron Carter. The Vanguard, Village Vanguard in December with Christian McBride. So hopefully I'll see some of the folks out there who are tuning in now. So
Sounds good. Sounds good. The one and only Mr. Steve Wilson, man. Thank you, bro, for sharing your musical journey with us, and your music and your spirit and your concept. And remember, IQ, EQ.
I got that, man. I got it. I'm giving you credit. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, D. Yes,
All
sir.
right, bro, man. I look forward to seeing you in St. Thomas again soon, man.
Yeah, I actually will be on the cruise again, so I'll hit you up before we come in.
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. Steve, thank you, man. It's been a pleasure, man. All
Thank
the
you, D.
best. Continued success to you, bro.
Peace and love. You too, brother.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes. That's the great Steve Wilson, man. You've checked him out. You've heard his music, man. Follow him. Go on Instagram, Facebook. Like him. He's the cat, man. He's doing it all out here. So it's a pleasure to have him on the show. And join me next week. This gentleman here is very, very dear to me, Mr. Ray Anderson. I was 20 years old in college when I met this gentleman, and he actually took me on my first tour to Canada for 3 weeks. Gave me my first shot on the road for 3.5 years. I worked with him. So join me as I bring the great, talented, and very unique sounding Ray Anderson to the sounds of the Diaspora show next week. Looking forward to seeing you guys there. Thank you guys again for joining me. And you take care. See you next week. All the best to y'all. Bye.